Welcome to another episode of the Black Menaces podcast. I'm your host, Nate. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Mr.
Sebastian Stewart Johnson, again with the government
name, always.
Always.
Good stuff. And we have an amazing guest on the show today, someone that I am very excited to be interviewing. Jillian, say hello to our audience.
Hey, everyone.
Perfect. Super excited to have Jillian here. We'll talk a little bit more about all of her amazing accomplishments in just a moment. But before we do that, you know what it is, Sebastian? It is with the Menace moment.
And yes, I will be giving a great Menace moment today on my personal opinion. It's Bayard Rustin. He's one of my favorite civil rights activists. And he has a particularly dope story. So a little bit about him. He was born March 17th, 1912 in Westchester, Pennsylvania. He obviously was an activist, but a little bit about him is that after he finished high school, he had different odd jobs and he traveled. And eventually he would obtain his university schooling at the City College of New York and a few other institutions, but he never did finally get that degree. But a little bit about him is he worked for the Fellowship of Reconciliation, which was a non-denominational religious organization from 1941 to 1953. And he also was a big organizer in New York and another reformist group that was called the Congress of Racial Equality. But because Bayard Rustin was a gay man, a gay black man in particular, in 1953, he was arrested in California after he was discovered having sex with another man. Because of it, he served 50 days in jail and was registered as a sex offender. And because of his sexuality as well, despite being very active in the civil rights movement as a whole, he had to be pushed to the back. But despite being pushed to the back, he was still a close advisor to the civil rights leader, MLK. And he was also the principal organizer of Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or the SCLC, which is incredibly prominent in the civil rights movement. And if you don't know about it, maybe just go learn. It's a good thing. But a huge thing that Bayard Rustin did in particular, that he was a chief architect of the March on Washington, which just about everybody in the world knows because that's where Dr. Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. So he was the reason that whole event happened. But oftentimes history books have looked over him because of his sexuality. He was overlooked in the moment because of it. But I feel like now people are now starting to hear his story a little bit more. He would continue doing much more activism because in 1964, he directed a student boycott of New York City's public school system. And then last but not least, he continued working as an activist, leading a whole A. Philip Randolph Institute in New York City as well. And got after the more black civil rights movement, he stepped in to fight more in the gay rights movement. And eventually in 2013, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, posthumously. I'm not good at that word. Posthumous. There we go. Yeah. I might be slightly dyslexic, I believe.
It's fine.
Yes, sounding out is not my strength. It's a fun fact about me. But he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and in 2020, he was finally pardoned for his 1953 conviction. And that is Bayard Rustin in a nutshell.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I had heard the name Bayard Rustin, but I did not know that he was like an architect of.
Yeah. You can actually see him in most pictures with MLK.
Interesting.
It's very fascinating.
That is. Jillian, were you going to say something?
Oh, no. I mean, all for Black queer history, man.
Absolutely, yeah. I will say it's interesting to note for me, growing up, I didn't learn a lot about like Black queer history. And I feel like it was kind of deliberate just because of like that homophobia that's in the Black community. Where I would hear names, like, oh, well, so-and-so did this, but they were gay, so we don't talk about them. Or, like that kind of thing. And like thinking about that, I realized like there's definitely a gap in my knowledge, my understanding. So thank you, Sebastian.
You're welcome.
Teaching us about Bayard Rustin. Am I saying that right?
Bayard Rustin. Yeah. He's dope.
Cool. Yeah. Well, without further ado, we have an icon in our midst.
Someone who
flew all the way from the exotic and beautiful land of Arizona.
Exotic is crazy.
The hot desert.
Oh man. And I lived in Arizona, so I loved it. Honestly, it was a beautiful place to live. But someone who flew all the way from Arizona to come and be here with us today in studio.
I'm just low-key like fangirling. It's fine.
We're fangirling.
Honestly, yeah. I've met you in person before, but like it'll be good to sit down and like have a conversation with you. I was going to read what you put in your bio here, that you are a daughter, a sister, a mother, a wife, an athlete, founder of the Phoenix Women's Rugby Club,
Come on.
and a professional bodybuilder and a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hats to wear.
That's a
It
lot.
is a lot of
the
hats to
same
wear.
thing.
Yes,
That's
indeed.
a long list. Shit, I did that.
And
You did.
we're gonna jump into it today.
All right.
Yes, we're excited to learn. So, if you would, also one thing that you have put down is that you are biracial, and also that you identify as queer, as a cis woman.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of just talk about what it was like coming into your biracial identity, figuring out who you were, from a young age, and then growing up?
I mean, I identify as Black. However, I feel that for intersectionality sake, it's, I guess also just to kind of give some context, sometimes it helps to say, oh yeah, I'm biracial. I have a white mom and I have a Black dad. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's important to kind of acknowledge both. I did also listen to the episode with your other guest that was talking about like how a lot of biracial people feel like they have to choose one or the other. We can get more into my story like down the road maybe, but
and if I could, sorry, I want to kind of like pivot my question since I've been checked a little bit. I appreciate it.
Oh, okay.
But so how, just kind of instead of your biracial identity, how was it coming into your Black identity, and how did that look?
Well, so the way I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I was born and raised there.
Okay.
Our population, the demographic of where I grew up was Chandler, Arizona, largely Latinx population. Next biggest would probably be white, and then the smallest was like Black folks. I grew up all the way from kindergarten all the way through 6th grade into middle school with my grandmother. She lived at home with us and helped raise me. And she's my Black grandma from West Africa. So every day she would wake up, walk me to school. I would be like, bye, across the street. And then she'd be there waiting at the crosswalk for me. Cool. So that was how I grew up, you know? So my parents both worked outside the home for a while. And she was like my largest role model. That's so cool. Super grateful because, I do have friends who are also biracial, and they feel like they're kind of disconnected. I grew up with a very rich exposure to culture and like specifically Nigerian culture. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that kind of helps answer your question, but my mom was also a mom who was fearless in saying, you're a Black child. So not a lot of white mothers or, and people's story I've talked with, like, they'll be like, well, you're biracial, but you're, but she's like, you're Black.
Right.
And so even when I'd be like, I'm not Black, she'd be like, no. So that's cute.
Hate to break it to you.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but so.
And do you feel like that was like helpful in your development or harmful or like a little bit of both?
I feel like it was helpful because even though maybe she could have prepared me a little differently, she couldn't come from the angle of she does not know how it is to navigate the world as a Black person. She is Black person adjacent, but she's not ever going to know what it's like to be my dad or be us. So I feel like she did the best that she could. And I feel like she did better than some kids get, where it's like, I'm going to let you know who you are. But I don't think that she could really articulate like, hey, when I first got called the N-word at school, I didn't talk to my mom about it. She was like, let's talk to your grandma. To navigate that, because she didn't know how to navigate that.
Interesting.
So I think she did the best that she could. I don't think it necessarily hurt me, but it really helped. I feel like for me, it helped me, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like, I think, I'm also biracial. I had a very like similar, I was very in within Black culture, like where I'm from is very, very heavily Black. But a lot of people I speak to as well, they have similar, like where their family doesn't recognize their Blackness, or there is not that connection with Black women or just Black people in general. So I think that's a lovely experience. I love that.
Yeah, it was good.
Absolutely. So when would you say that you kind of, aside from your mother kind of talking about it, when would you say that you first became aware of like your racial identity and like, you know, how old were you when you
I
said you
would
came
say
into that?
really young.
Yeah. Is there like a specific moment where you kind of became aware of the fact that like, oh, maybe I'm not the same as like some of my friends?
The earliest I could probably remember is probably like when I went to school. So like kindergarten. Because I feel like that's when you are trying, like you're kind of catching your footing as a kid and you're navigating something outside of your household, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, you might not seem different to yourself and the people that you're immediately around most of the time. But then when you're outside, it's like people will tell you how you're different. And so like, oh, well, this is Jillian. She has curly hair. Why does everyone else around me not have curly hair? It's like straight and blonde and, you know, just, or like long and straight, you know, and it's just like you start to just notice those differences. I mean, also just culturally speaking, like African culture is just different. And so like when I started kind of making more friends and, you know, going to their houses, you start to notice the cultural differences that are just different.
Yeah.
The way you speak to your elders or you don't, you know, so.
I was going to ask you about that actually, if I could, kind of like your grandma is Nigerian, right? Inside the house. So your father was as well, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I mean, that's how it normally works, but just want to make sure. But I guess my question was, how was it operating and kind of learning African-American culture while having heavily African culture in your home and seeing that difference that you kind of just mentioned?
Well, you just note it, like, sometimes it's blatant. Like, sometimes it was like, oh no, you're Black, but your friends, they're Black American, and it's different. So that was something where I remember being told that, and I was like, well, that's weird. Her skin's pretty much the same color as mine. Or, you know, like we're all Black, but we're not all Black. Like, you know? So it was, I mean, it's, you know, and I guess African culture is vast and varied too. So, I mean, not everyone was doing the same things that we were doing. You know, someone from Ghana or someone from Ethiopia might operate different than someone who's Yoruba. But like, yeah, it was just, sometimes it's blatant. Sometimes it's just like, oh, well, like my grandma never taught me how to like lay down my baby hairs. But like I had friends who that was like something that was part of their style and culture. So it was just like, oh, well, I'd go to their house. We'd be doing each other's hair. And they're like, well, we're just going to do these. And then I'd go home. My grandma's like, what is this? Like, so it's just like, I guess it kind of borders upon like, you know, being separate, but then like, I guess, I don't know. It's, you know, I don't know how to describe that.
Yeah.
But you just kind of notice the ways that you're in common, and then you notice the ways that are different. And sometimes it overlaps and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's intersecting. Sometimes it's not. But yeah.
That's really interesting. Okay.
It is.
And so I guess since we're kind of on the subject of identity, did you also grow up a member of the LDS Church?
I did.
Okay. So how was that? Like, how was it merging that LDS identity with the identity of being African, being Black, all of that?
So how I came in, I'm actually a convert.
Okay.
So, was a convert. My mom was born and raised like LDS, you know, my dad was never a member.
Okay.
And so that he identifies as Anglican, you know, so,
cool.
You know, I used to go to a lot of different churches. But then we reached a point where, you know, I used to go to church with my grandma, to Black church, and they had donuts and they had the fun music. And then it was kind of like, I met the neighbors. I will never forget them, the Campbells. They lived on the corner and they were like, you're going to come to church with us. And I was like, okay. So I started going to church with them. And I took the missionary discussions and then read the Book of Mormon.
How
I was
old were
an
you?
avid reader. I was 9.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I was like, very like,
yeah,
I'm going to do this.
Right,
I'm jumping in like, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
And then obviously I guess not everyone might know or be aware, but if it's a part member household, the other non-member parent was required to give, you know, permission. My mom was inactive at the time. So they also had to be like, are you okay with this? And, you know, they gave the okay. My grandpa, my mom's dad came down and baptized me. And that kind of opened that up.
And you were 9 when you got
I was 9.
baptized?
Yeah.
Okay.
August 1st, 1998, I think.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah. And then, then comes the nuance of growing up, we didn't have the typical, it was a very atypical Mormon household. My mom was inactive for a while, then was reactivated after I joined. And then my dad just would come if it was important. Like if we had like a really good important primary program or, some sort of important, something was happening, he would show up and support. But, and my grandma as well. But, yeah, so I mean, I, grew up, get older, you start going to seminary. I would say that maybe the biggest middle school going into high school is probably where I became very aware of like how I was different in church and not just church, like based on my skin color, but also just the fact that, my mom was active, but my dad was not.
Right.
And so that was really interesting, not having a priesthood holder in the home. So
right.
Yeah, you kind of start to notice things.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Notice things like what? Like what would you say specifically?
I would say sometimes it was more like sometimes it's blatant, right? Like I remember my baby sister, Rhea, we were living in Gilbert, Arizona, which is very similar to Salt Lake. Like there's very much churches on every corner. You get release time during high school to go to seminary. She had gone to go play at a neighbor's house. We'll call them the Smiths. And she came back home and she had a picture with her. And on the picture, it was a picture of our family. And the little girl had drawn my mom. And then the rest of us in the house that were Black, people of color, she just drew big black scribbles and was like, "This is your family."
Wow.
And I was like, that's really something weird to draw on a piece of paper and give to someone.
Right.
Like,
That is,
so
yeah.
my sister never forgot that. And my mom was just like,
And these were church people?
yeah, they were in our ward. They lived right around the corner. So my mom went over and ended up talking to them. But it's just like stuff like that where you're just like, huh, you kind of, you can't help but internalize it, right? It's, you try and assimilate the best that you can. You try and follow the principles and live by, the doctrines. But then it's like, I feel like people will never stop reminding you how different you are.
That's very true. And I feel like with that picture, they single-handedly debunked the whole "I don't see colored" thing.
Right.
That's
it's seeming like that's
blatant.
There it is,
All they
Crayola,
saw was
Crayola
color.
colors.
Come on.
That's literally the only thing that they saw was color. So,
Yeah.
man, that's wild. And I hate to just kind of like keep bouncing from thing to thing,
okay.
but like I just want to cover like all of the different identities that you have. So in addition to your LDS identity, in addition to your Black identity, in addition to your Nigerian identity, talk about your queer identity and like how you came into that.
Absolutely.
When you began to realize that maybe I'm a little bit different in that area, and like what it was like for you discovering your queer identity.
I just got like full body chills. So I knew really early on, like I have that effect on people.
He whispered, "That's the spirit."
I'm goofy like that.
Sorry.
I mean, here I am feeling it. So I was aware really early on, like from like probably 3rd, 4th grade. I was just like, huh. And I feel like you are kind of surrounded by all these things that tell you how it is. And then you're kind of like operating in this gray area. But I mean, I guess in general, it's our society is very cis heteronormative, right? Yeah. It's the man and the woman. And, that's the ideal and that's how it operates. But then I didn't really, because you're exposed to that, you don't really have like a way of articulating like, well, what if I'm different? Right. And I'm different in all these different ways. But like this feels really different. And I have always just kind of been all over the place, but I just definitely knew that I was not like hetero. I was like, but I like this person and I like this person. It doesn't really matter to me. I just really like this person. And then as you get older, then I feel like once I got kind of in like young women's, it was very much like you are then conditioned to be like, you're going to be, this is your role.
Right.
Gender roles are very set, very firm, laid out, and this is how you're going to operate. And then I was like, wow, I must be, something is wrong.
Right.
Like and then came the shame and the guilt and like, well, if I'm gonna make this work, then I'm gonna have to try and fit a square peg in a round hole. Like,
and what age do you feel like that was where you kind of was coming to that realization?
When I was probably like 12, 11, 12, 13, like when you're kind of pubescent and it's like,
growing into
okay,
yourself.
yeah. And, you know, like then the topic of dating comes and I'm like, well, what if I don't want to date? I don't want to date this guy. I want to just go hang out with my girlfriends. Like, and then like figuring out like, well, I like this person as my friend, but I also kind of want to kiss them. Like, you know, and it's just like, you're trying to work that. And it's like very much an internal struggle. And, I mean, once I went and sat in on an interview, like a worthiness interview, it was very clear, like, this is dirty. This is wrong. You will do this or you will end up needing to get help, which, you know, we can get into it, but I was offered conversion therapy. It's like, and that was in college, but the worthiness interviews, when we start to do the baptisms for the dead and all that, that was where I was like, okay, so I need to go along to get along. And I need to start like praying to have my burden and this trial that I've chosen.
Right.
I felt I was very much like I was predestined. Like, this is my trial in my life. Not only was I born Black, but now I just had to like sweeten that pot a little bit and make life a little harder for myself, you know?
Yeah. Which I think is it's the most manipulative and the most like toxic belief system that's poured into our society, or specifically into religion and Mormonism, but it's the idea that you choose to be like unhappy.
Yeah.
Why, you know what I mean? Like you choose to be unhappy to be eternally happy, quote unquote. And I just think that is very contradicting logic to use to then control somebody's actions.
Yeah. Did y'all ever get the explanation that was like, oh, so we all know the whole fence sitter theory, whereas Black people were less valiant.
Oh yeah. Been called a fence sitter more than once.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah. But then on the other side of that, then there were the people that would teach, oh no, Black people were more valiant. That's why they chose the trial of being Black. Did y'all ever get that? Did you ever hear that one?
I feel like that maybe might be someone who's like a white liberal trying to like soften the blow a little.
It feels like benevolent racism. Instead, you know, it's like we always talk benevolent sexism. It feels like benevolent racism. You're so much better than me that you had to be oppressed in this life. Like, I'm cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, if I don't want to be better than you, I'm cool. I'm perfectly fine. You know?
I just
like,
want equity.
love the sinner, hate the sin. That's benevolent homophobia.
It's terrible.
Okay, you're gay, but
we hate you, but it's fine. Or no, we hate your lifestyle, but we
your
love
lifestyle.
you.
This is a choice.
It doesn't work like that.
Okay.
And you mentioned, just to jump into back what you're saying, you mentioned your college experience, conversion therapy. Can we dive into that if possible?
Wait, I'm sorry.
Oh, we don't have to dive into it.
No, I want to get to that for sure. But before we do, I wanted to ask, what was it like? Like, because you said you kind of became aware of all of those different things, like around like 11, 12. You're a recent convert to the church, so you're kind of catching up on all the stuff you might have missed in primary. What was it like after going into those worthiness interviews, realizing that you had to like adjust yourself? What was it like, kind of like compacting all of that or like suppressing it as a teenager before you got to your college years?
I'm glad you stopped me.
I would say I'm a people pleaser, right? So it's like it was very much a mixing pot of this is my trial. I chose this. Like, and I have everything laid out for me. I want to get to the celestial kingdom and I am going to go through the temple and then it's like, but if I'm going to do those things, then I'm going to have to, you know, not succumb to the natural woman. I hate natural man, but the natural, like just normal feelings that I felt like were normal, but then being told they're abnormal, then it's like, well, if I'm going to make this work, it's like cognitive dissonance. It's like, okay, I'm just going to give up. It was the beginning of like a domino effect of like giving up little pieces of myself to like get my eternal glory.
Mm.
And that it's damaging. There was
Yeah,
a lot
absolutely.
of self-loathing.
Mm.
Like definitely was like, there were times where it got really dark and it's like, if I can't make this work, then like, why am I even here?
Mm.
It was really tough to navigate. But then it's like, well, I'm a people pleaser. That people pleaser in me is like, okay, put on the mask and I'm just going to go out and I'm going to like go hard. Like, just like how when I took the missionary discussions, it was like, I'm going to read the whole Book of Mormon, and I did. And it's like, well, if this is what I need to do and this is my role, I'm going to step into that. I'm going to lean into that and I'm going to do the best that I possibly can, because I guess it'll all be fixed in the end. Like, not only will I be made white in the second coming, I'm going to be made straight. What a win. Like,
Right.
But it was hard. But then it's like, well, you just kind of, I feel like you get numbed enough to the fact, like you get numb to it enough where it's like, well, I guess this is just my bed. I'm going to lay in it.
Yeah.
So what was
Wow.
dating like for you as a teenager then? Like once you got to the dating age of 16.
So angsty.
What was it like?
So I preferred the company of women when I was in puberty. And it was interesting because I'm like, why am I so mad that my best girlfriend got a boyfriend? It was, it surpassed like,
right.
you know? But then it was like, well, if I'm going to do this, then I just need to like be boy crazy and be like, oh yeah, like Brother Wolf, he looks so good. Like, what? Like, but it was just like, you don't like Brother Wolf.
Right.
You like his girlfriend. Like, it's just weird. It's just so weird. So like, you'd show up and do like the youth dances and like, you just do your thing. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, can I just go hang with my girlfriends, or can I go hang with like the people who are weird like me? You know? So, I mean, dating was okay. But then it's like, here I was in high school, like I would do my best to date boys who I could tolerate. And then like on the flip side, I'd be having like sleepovers with girls and then like we would kiss. Like, and I'd be like, and that's what really got me excited, you know? But then it was like, if I couldn't, I would have to be very intellectual with a man or a boy at that point, because you're in high school, you're kids. But it's like I'd have to be very intellectually stimulated in order to make it work.
Right.
I don't know if that kind of answers that, but
I think it does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Tough.
Wow. We're back to me.
It was tough.
Going to college.
Yeah.
Very important time of everybody's life. So how did that age come about for you? How did you get to the conversion therapies, part of your college experience? Kind of how did that whole intersect with your race, your sexuality, your gender, everything? How did that look for you?
So, okay, the move to Utah. So I graduated high school early because I was like, I'm done with this place. And then my mom ended up getting sick. She had a brain tumor. So I was like, it kind of coincided like perfectly. So I was like, I'm going to get the heck out of high school. So I was going to school during the day, going to school at night, graduated early in December.
Wow.
Get to February, mom has a brain tumor, brain surgery, she's fine. They get, it was good. And then it came the time where my mom's like, I'm fine, but you need to you're not going to school and I'm good. So you need to go get a job or you need to find something you want to do. So I was like, well, I'll go up to Utah, and I could be a nanny or I could work as an assistant or something like that. So I ended up getting a job there, up in Sugar House, working for a family. That was really weird. The dad was really weird and inappropriate, but I was there for some months. I started going to Institute at U of U just to get around people my age. And then I shifted out of that job. And then I ended up going to LDS Business College.
Okay.
So, and then I moved to West Valley. So I was here, and, I was very much craving being around people of color, Black folks. And so I started playing touch rugby with the Polynesians and just chilling with them and going to jam sessions. And then I started going to Genesis group and I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of the best times I had at Black church, but also people look like me. But then I see this lady over there, she looks like my mom. So this is a cool space. So there was all of that, but then again comes like the worthiness interview. So I was very fully candid with my ecclesiastical leadership that it's probably somewhere in my file somewhere, like, you struggle with same-sex attraction. I hate that. But so
Yeah.
it was like basically the height of the struggle with that, but then also how that intersected with like my skin color was like, okay, well, I'm a history buff. So I'm like, oh, so Genesis, like, how did Genesis come to be and why was it like that? And then it's like, oh, that's a thing, like the priesthood ban. Okay. Then I talked to people about it, but it was through a white lens because my family that's LDS is white. And so it was like talking to like my grandma, like, how did you feel about that? Well, it was just in due time. All these different things were happening. And so like, I remember an interview I went to with my bishop at the time, and I was at LDS Business College, and he was like, well, here are essentially your choices. You're really struggling with this. You either need to fast and pray and hope that your burden can be eased and you can go and marry a man. And that's what you can do. Or you can be celibate, and there's no, being who you are isn't the sin itself. The sin is acting upon it, right? Lusting after anyone who isn't a cis man. Or if you're really feeling like you are really struggling and we can't manage this within us meeting and the resources I've already given you. There was also like, pornography was an issue, because then it's like, you're looking for intimacy for like that fills what you want. And so then it was like, well, you can do the addiction recovery program. We can get you help. Like, you can go to conversion therapy and, see a therapist to help. They called it getting help, but there was kind of an underground group of us at LDS Business College who were in the alphabet mafia. And we were like, we would know. And I had friends who were like, if they offer you help, do not go. And they were gay men, and they were like, don't do it. It's conversion therapy. They say it's, counseling. It's not, don't do it. They're like, just, go to the program, do this 12-step program, because the church's pornography addiction, which is loosely defined.
It's a shit show is what it is.
Yeah. It's modeled after AA. So like, you have a sponsor, whatever. And so pornography and sex addiction. So, and they define addiction as like, if you've done it once, you're addicted.
Right. Like,
Yeah. So it's like, if you've had sex outside of marriage or more than once, and you've done the repentance process. So it was all of that. It was all kind of smushed together. And then you've got all these different things kind of shooting at you. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna put this on the shelf. I'm gonna put this on the shelf. I'm going to focus on this. Obviously my biggest problem is being queer.
Right.
So, just try and manage that. But there's no managing like human development and normal, like
yourself.
Yeah.
You're
You're just kind of constantly told like, you're what's wrong, so fix it.
Right.
And that's the problem. So here's all the things that we can give to you. And I knew for sure I did not want to be celibate. I knew for sure. I was like, I am awoken. I don't want to do that.
I'm cool. Okay.
I don't want to do that. I'm not interested. And I was like, I'll do the 12-step program. I've been in and out. Not currently, but I was in and out of the 12-step program for a long time, even after I got married to my ex-husband. But like, it was just, I just feel like it's just constantly, if it's not one thing, it's another thing. And it's just like all angles, just catching it. You can't catch a break. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have my own experiences with the 12-step program, getting plopped into that when I was like 11, 12. And it's just like, I remember getting I got sent to a therapist. It was an LDS, LDS Family Services.
Yeah.
I went to an LDS Family Services therapist with my dad for porn. And my dad would sit in on the therapy session, so that didn't help. But then also the therapist like gave me like this packet for like sex addicts. And I remember going through the packet, and I'm like 12, 13 years old. And it's like, oh, this is, if you've ever had trouble where you drive past a strip club and you just can't resist the go in, like, what do you tell yourself to not go in? I'm like, I can't drive. Like, what am I gonna do at a strip club? And so I just remember thinking like, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
And so I felt terrible because I was like, oh, I should be trying harder. But then at the same time, I was
Right.
like, this isn't for me. And I always just kind of had that feeling
Mm.
like this doesn't make sense for me and for where I'm
Right.
at. But trying to balance that with like trying to balance what you feel with what you're being told is super difficult in that
Yeah.
situation. So I can definitely empathize with that a little bit. But
Mm.
would you be comfortable talking about like how your identity led you kind of like into your first marriage? Is that something that you feel comfortable talking
Sure.
about?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
yeah,
fine.
if you
No,
could,
that's
yeah.
fine. So I lived in Utah, and then a bunch of things, just living life here for a few years. Then I went back home. And I was just like, I was, and I don't know, I kept begging and begging and begging to be sent on a mission. I was like, just send me on a mission. I will go through the temple. I will go serve a mission, and it will just get me away from like the obligation of feeling like I need to date and be married. And it will and honestly too, I was like, I don't mind like going somewhere, send me somewhere foreign. I spoke French in high school. Send me like, I was just
Right.
like, get me out of
At
here.
least give me one good thing there.
Yeah. But then, my bishops were just like, no. And I wonder, I've always speculated
they
if
wouldn't let you go on a mission.
no.
Oh wow.
I was also,
crazy.
I was like younger. So I mean, at the time I was 20. So I was getting to up in age where I could go, but they were just like, no, and I went home, met with the bishop at my home ward, and he was like, I feel that your mission in life is to find a husband. And I wonder if it was because somewhere in my file, like it said, don't, like maybe I was unsendable on a mission because I had been so candid about being same-sex attracted that they were like, I mean, speculation, but who knows?
I mean, for a grown man to tell a young woman your goal and your mission in life is to get married, that's pretty insane.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like that's pretty sick.
Yeah. I mean, and I tried, like I dated guys, and it was just like it just didn't work, or it worked too much, and it was like, and I honestly, I feel like maybe it's like a purity culture thing. Like when you're thinking about not doing it, then you want to do it.
Right.
And it's
Absolutely.
like, it becomes problematic, even more problem. It's like compounding,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I got home, and then I had agreed to go out to the movies with some friends. A guy that I knew from back in Utah, he'd moved down there as well. And he was like, well, it's cool. Like my brother, he's an RM. You've never met him, but I had met tons of his other brothers up here through other like business and whatever, just social circles. And then he's like, yeah, my brother, you've never met him. He's back from his mission. And then I'm going to bring this other girl and we'll just go to the movies. And then we went to the movies, and then I was like, okay, maybe we could make something work. I was fresh out of this discussion with my bishop, and he was like, and he was convinced. He's like, the opportunity will present itself. I was convinced. I was like, well, wow. Then you start connecting the dots. Like, is this divine intervention? Like, okay, bet. Like, you cute. I could be down with that.
There was some intellectual stimulation going on.
Yeah, there was some intellectual stimulation. I was like, oh, wow, you went on mission. Oh, tell me all about it so I can live vicariously through you, because I would love to do that. Anyway, so, we start dating, and, it was very much like we were in the singles ward then, because my home ward bishop was like, you need to go to singles ward. And then I went to the singles ward part of the time that was close to my parents, and then part of the time of the singles ward where my ex-husband was at. And so then, got just thrown into like the singles ward, which was really different, outside of a college, which was a different vibe. I feel like it was like people were extra ready to get married. And it was very encouraged. And so like, then it's like you get in these groups of friends and everyone's pairing off, and then everyone's getting engaged. And then it felt like the natural order of things. A few months in, he's like, yeah, I prayed about it and I think that we should be married. And I was like, okay, well, I'll go meet with the stake president. And again, had to bring up like, hey, stake president, like I've met this guy and this is the plan. And I was very candid with him and said, same-sex attraction, that, this is what we're working with. And he's like, well, you either marry this guy, because we were together dating for like 3 months. He's like, you either marry this guy or you cut him loose and you find someone new. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was like, okay.
Interesting. That's what? Wow.
I think that because like maybe just the concern about messing up maybe, or
Right.
whatever.
That's real. Okay.
But yeah, so then, we started going to the temple prep classes, and like we just had a chat about it one day, and he gave me a fortune cookie, and he was like, "Will you marry me?" in the fortune cookie. And I was like, "Yes." Can't wait to tell my friends at the singles ward on Sunday. And then, I have a lot of love. My ex-husband is the parent of 2 of my children, and effectively we built a life together for a time. So, I don't really have anything necessarily to say negative about him. It was just like, here he was, and he's like, oh, and the state president was ecstatic. He's like, here's this person, same sex attracted, now hetero,
Right.
and then, we were together a while, engaged. Like by the time we were married, we had been together for about a year.
Okay.
Which is a little longer than,
Right.
whatever. But he also had a different kind of life too. He served a mission late in life. He served in the military for a time and, did a military contract. So he had a different kind of life, and it was kind of two unconventional people kind of coming together. But yeah, so, it was very much my church leaders getting ready to go to the temple. It was like, okay, we're going to get you ready. You've been totally transparent. Is there anything else you need to say? Anything you need to confess about, your same-sex attraction? Are you still watching pornography? Is that something you're doing? And, I laid off of everything. I was like, no, I only have eyes for him, brother, So that was basically it. And we got married in the Mace Temple in 2010. And in 2011, I had a baby. And yeah, the rest is kind of history. Had babies, and I guess a couple of years into the marriage, there started to be some issues where it was like, well, I know that I have mad love for you, and also there's part of my identity that's not being honored here.
Yeah.
Definitely started watching porn a lot more. It was, gay porn, and the day he found my porn stash, that was not a good day in our household. And he was like, I thought, what is this? Like, and he felt betrayed. And, also the culture in the church is like, if you're watching pornography and you're married, that's like adultery.
Infidelity.
It's
Right.
infidelity. So
Literally.
he felt very betrayed. And, given the circumstances, rightfully so. And I was dishonest about it. And it was not a culture of honesty where it's like, you could talk about things openly. It's like, you keep it very and so then there was a bunch of other things, I ended up having like a really traumatic miscarriage, and then I got pregnant with our son. And then that was kind of the downhill. When I had my miscarriage, that was kind of a catalyst in me leaving. It really kind of broke me wide open in a way that I had not been broken before.
Leaving the LDS church or your marriage, or
both?
Okay, both.
I guess, in hindsight, it's both, because it was really a catalyst at first for like, well, what is my meaning? Like, and if I can't even birth a kid, like, then what am I good for? This is the role. And I had to deal with you, God, what is going on? And then, because then that kind of was a catalyst for that, then I said, hey, we reached a point then, a couple years later where it was like, I cannot stay here. I want to be with you, but I cannot stay here. It is hurting my mental health. Like, I hate myself. Some days I want to die, because it's like you're being told all the time, like, there's something wrong with you. And I just was like, I either need to step away or I will not be here. And then he came to me. He's like, he thought about it. He came to me. He's like, you know what? I respect what you want to do and how you feel. And I also need to honor myself. And if we cannot go to the celestial kingdom together, we will do it apart. And I will go my way and you can go your way.
Damn.
And I was like, well, okay. And we were living with my parents at the time. And so then started the process of like, well, you'll go your way, I'll go my way, we'll separate. And then I became a single mother.
Well,
so yeah, that's the long and the short of it.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
There's
I hear
a
you.
lot to unpack there.
There is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure I have to remember that I'm a BYU student, so I have to be careful on the next words that were to come out of my mouth. But I do hear you on your story. I think it makes a lot of sense. that one kind of correlates with the other. Just as you're saying, like you left the church at a similar time you left the marriage. And I think I've seen in my own life that in whatever circumstance it is that one happens to go with the other a lot, is when two people get divorced, one of them potentially is going to also leave the church. I think it's kind of a pattern I've seen.
Well, and I think also like when you're really caught up in orthodoxy,
Mm,
like it really becomes hard to not, like you either have it or you don't.
mm.
Like
Yep.
I grew up in a house where I was like, well, my mom went to church happily, never went to the temple, but like honored her beliefs. My dad was Anglican, whatever he believed. I didn't even know that guy believed in God until we talked about it when I was an adult. But they both had separate beliefs, but they were together.
Right.
And they've been together over 30 years at this point.
Mm.
So to me, I'm just kind of like, I came and I was like, I know we can make this work because I've seen it.
Right.
It was modeled
I'm
for
a
me.
living experience.
Yeah. I saw my parents do it. So I believe in us. But then, you know, when you get caught up in orthodoxy and it's like, well, if I can't have that, he literally was like, I can't have my wagon hitched to yours. I was like, all right. Then and that's the thing. I'm not the kind of person that's going to chase somebody.
Right.
I'm just going to be like, well, sounds like a boundary to me. So, okay.
Do you feel like it almost felt invalidating in a way for him to respond that way for you, in the sense where it's like you are stepping away for your mental health and your mental and emotional safety? Do you feel like that hurt you in a way, like I was still willing to push and fight for this, but simply because this is literally causing like whatever, you're not okay with that?
Oh, it was heartbreaking.
Right.
Because then it's like, because you have everything that you build and then it's like, okay, we're going to shift away from that. But like, I want to be fully there for you. And I guess a part of me, I think if I can look back at it, right, it's like a part of me was like, well, I thought you loved me more than just because of the church. I definitely had to do that for you because here I am, a queer woman that loves you for who you are. You're the father of my kids, you're quirky and funny. And there's all these things I've come to appreciate about you. And so, yeah, it was really heartbreaking and sad. I don't know, years down the road, could it have worked out differently? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we would have still ended up where we're at now. But, in that moment, it was just like, damn.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So
It's definitely a lot to do with him.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, I don't know if it kind of fits in yet, but at this time you're living in Arizona, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, as your relationship, your marital relationship anyway, comes to an end, and then also your relationship with the church is kind of coming to an end. What, I guess, what was the next step after that? Like, where did you find yourself? Like, when did you start getting into bodybuilding, into real estate? Like, when did all of that kind of happen? I guess like your second leg of self-discovery. When did that happen?
Can I just include in that question, like maybe if you can a little bit, if this part of your story, talk about how maybe you became, like, how leaving the church and stepping into all these different aspects of your identity now helped, liberate you or empower you, and however that looked for you potentially. Just wanted to throw that in there too.
Okay. I'll rewind a little bit. So I remember, like, because when you're in the church, right, like you're told like you don't read any kind of literature that's anti or derogatory towards the church. We had gone to the Easter pageant, and normally I just pass by those people that are like protesting, but just in passing, I had my baby on my hip. I just grabbed their pamphlet, I put it in my bag, and I just forgot about it. And then the next day, my ex-husband was at school and I was at home alone with my baby, and then I was going through my diaper bag and I was like, oh, and I read, this piece of literature and I'm like, oh, like my critical thinking is like saying this makes kind of like some sense. And then it was like, it kind of reopened some of those, like I hate, it's kind of more, but like picked the scab of like racism for me, because it was like, oh, well, Blacks couldn't have the priesthood and here's why. And like, it was like a truth document,
Yeah.
And then it's like, you fast forward, then it's like, well, then I had that miscarriage, and then that like cracked open, like, well, here I am talking to my bishop, like, oh, well, what's going to happen with this baby? And what does this even mean? And then like all these different things, but like, you like, it basically like all it's like a house of cards. It all toppled to the ground. And then like, you're kind of responsible for like, okay, well, what now? I don't have someone telling me how I feel about certain things politically. And then like, I found myself like looking into these things that I had kind of denied myself. So like, I remember like one time we were sitting in sacrament meeting and the lady got up and or in fast and testimony meeting, and the lady got up and she's like, Obama's the Antichrist. And I was like, that's unique. And then it was like, and then on the flip side, it was like, well, we have people that are going to be driving from Arizona. So if you can volunteer your time and your efforts, we're going to have, caravan to California and we're going to protest and go knock doors about Prop 8.
Mm.
And here I am closeted. Like, we're going to go knock doors about what?
Right.
Count me out. Like, and so then everything falls apart. And then you're kind of like coming into like, okay, well, where was I fresh out of that? I was a single mom working 3-4 jobs sometimes, and then trying to like raise my kids. And then we had to navigate co-parenting in the church and like out of the church. So then we had to have those conversations. And so the kids were going to church with their dads on his weekends and then not going to church with me on my weekends. And it was very much, we had an agreement. I will say this too, like, he, as far as I know, and as far as I've, been told, like he was very much, he would defend me and be like, nope, you don't get to say that about my ex-wife. I get to do this, she gets to do that, and both are fine. And so that was really helpful. Like we definitely navigated those. Like, I feel like that was the best kind of circumstance I could have had as far as that goes.
That's very rare.
I mean, cause sometimes these families will be like, I'm taking your kids, but it was not like that.
Right.
And then it was like, well, now I get to kind of figure out who I am without someone telling me who I am. And that was like, okay, what do I know for sure? I was really into like Oprah, Super Soul Sunday, and she would ask people, what do you know for sure? And then it literally was like, well, I know that I'm kind, because I didn't know a lot of things for sure. And then I'd have to go and discover that. It's like, well, I know that I'm a hard worker because here I am working 3 jobs, raising, 3 kids and doing these things. And then I reached a point then where like with kind of some economic stability came some more free range to like go explore like hobbies. So then I kind of got involved with like the rugby community, and it was like, okay, well, now that I have some money coming in and things are not so touch and go all the time, I'm going to go and just go where I can take my kids. So I just started playing touch rugby because I was like, I'm about to turn 30. I just want to do the things that will bring me joy and just try a bunch of different things. I got into Latin dancing. That was really fun. And then like, I just tried to find community outside of like a religious one.
Right.
But then also I was still like on hyper like awareness mode, like that seems a little culty. I'm gonna like not get too involved. So it was like just trying, like it was trial and error.
Yeah.
So I get my first salaried job. I thought I was like a big girl. Like I got my first like making $45,000 a year, and I'm single mom. I'm like making it, I'm turning 30. Like, this is great. I'm playing rugby. And then I was like, I'm going to start a rugby team. So then I started a rugby team, super grassroots. It was just like, I'm just going to talk about rugby and I want women to have a rugby team. So then I was like, hey, and then you just kind of start, if the more you talk, the more you attract people who are kind of all about the same stuff. So then I ran into some girls and they had played rugby at U of A, and Jess and Sammy, they were like, yeah, let's do this. And so we were grassroots together, and it was nice to finally have women to go play with, because before that, for almost 2 years, I was playing with the men and training with the men. And I was like, it hits a little different when you're getting hit by a 6'1", 250-pound dude.
Some giant dude named Sione. It's not the same.
Yeah, I was like, So yeah. And then, so I started the rugby team, and then that's where kind of like, in women's rugby, it's very much an inclusive space. It's very much a queer space. Not to say that men's rugby isn't, but I think because of like patriarchy and like some homophobia things, like people are like, Arizona has a gay rugby team, a gay men's rugby team, and they're great. They're called the Phoenix Storm. And so like we would very much cross paths, and that gave me the space to really like come into my queerness more. It was like, okay, like I can play sports, I can do these things, and like I can be in a space where I can just, it's safe to be who I am. And that was really beautiful. And I think because of that, it really put me in a place where I had been going to therapy for some years and like really got good at being alone and like being there for my kids. And like I would date around, but it was just like, okay, like cool. But then comes a love story. My now wife, she ended up getting orders out of EOD school, which is bomb tech school in Florida. So her first duty station was Luke Air Force Base. And she Googled rugby in Arizona and Phoenix women's rugby came up. She came out to a practice and like I saw her and I went and shook her hand, just like I know how to do. And I would just go and say, hey, I'm Jay. Nice to meet you. Like, welcome to the team. We're so happy you're here. And she's like, yeah. I was like, okay, you're cute.
Oh, that's so cute.
That's adorable.
And then, yeah, like she just kept coming to practice. And then like my kids were always where I was at. Like, you know, if I didn't have my kids, they were at their dad's. And so like, it was not uncommon for my kids to be at a rugby practice and just like playing and seeing whoever was there. And so like, I remember she was like, hey, everyone, this like, I think this second or third practice, she's like, I'm going to be running a 5K. If anyone wants to come run, I was like, I will not be running because I only run in rugby, but I will come and like watch. I'll come and watch. And then, you know, whatever. And we hung out that day after her run and she took first place. And I was like, hey, yeah. And she was like totally friend zoning me, but I was like, I'm persistent.
Can't friend zone a winner.
Yeah. I was like, hey. And then so long and the short of it is we start talking. I tell her, hey, I'm gay. And she's like, well, I think you're straight because you have kids. And I was like, queer people have kids too. It's fine. But anyway, we start dating and, you know, then we become official. Like, I'm like, yeah, I think I want you to be my girlfriend. She was my first girlfriend that I ever had. And then came like navigating things with like, okay, you're dating someone and your girlfriend has kids. So let's see how that is. And then came COVID. So like we ended up becoming official like in November, had a whole rugby season.
November
and then
2020 or 2019?
2019.
Okay.
And then had a whole rugby preseason and season. It was beautiful, great, traveling, playing rugby, kids, all the things. And then March of 2020, she's like, I'm going to go up to Colorado because she plays rugby for Air Force 2. And so she was like, I'm going to go do that. You can come meet me, whatever. And then like they shut down the country and then they shut down the rugby tournament. It was like a big deal. Like they had armed forces, like Air Force, they had royal people, like the Royal Air Force from New Zealand was there and the Australian military was there. So then they were like, we're going to do this great thing. And then COVID happened. They shut everything down March 15. She flies back and then we just kind of shelter in place. And then we moved her into my place and we were like, okay, we're just going to do this, you know? And it was very much like COVID, dating, kids, and like all the things. And then, you know, we ended up getting a dog together. That was cool. So we could walk the dog outside. That's cute. But yeah, so that really will teach you a lot about being a couple, you know, the Rona. And then, yeah, then we ended up getting engaged. In May, Cinco de Mayo. We'd watched this really cute documentary about these lesbian ladies who played baseball. Like it was like a league of their own kind of thing, but they played baseball and they fell in love on their baseball team, but they were like in the 50s. So it was like these older, like lesbian women, like all in this gay, like football or baseball league. And then I was moved by that. I was like, we're together. We play rugby. Will you marry me? And then like she proposed to me like a couple months later. And then yeah, like we were engaged and then we ended up eloping. And then we bought a house. Like it was just like boom, boom, boom. Like
the other,
like so I guess you asked about real estate. So in March of 2020 was when I was wrapping up getting my real estate license. I was like at my big girl salary job. And I was like, I'm just going to get my license on the side. And I had asked for time off and they were like, yeah, you can have the time off. And then they came back to me and said, oh, wait a minute. We don't want to give you that time off. I was like, well, I could just leave. And so they called me on my bluff and I left. I was like, I got savings. I feel like I'm basking in it. Right. So I went to real estate school, got my license. And then I helped us buy our first house, which was big for me because like, I had never, it was like very much housing insecurity, like as a single mom,
Yeah.
like I would move every year or so. And then at the apartment I was at, I had been there. That was the longest time I'd ever stayed in one place. And so it was a big leap. So we eloped on September 1st. We closed on our house on September 3rd.
Wow.
Of 2020. And then we moved our new blended family into the house, along with like, we still were co-parenting with my kids' dads. And so, yeah, like that's kind of how that all worked out.
It's beautiful. I love the story.
It's a lot.
It's so cute.
I say
love
it out loud and I'm like, that's a lot.
It's an amazing story though. And I've never like heard the whole thing like all at once, but yeah, it's awesome. And I feel like kind of the what I'm getting from it is like basically like the first half of your life, it kind of felt like everything like that you did was kind of told to you, like what you were supposed to be, what you were going to do. And then like once you broke away from that and you just started making your own decisions, there was like some trial and error, but like for the most part, you figured out who you were and you were true to that. And like, it just is interesting to hear like the first thing you were talking about, like growing up, going to college, all of that, your first marriage, and then like hearing about everything that happened after that once you like took charge of your own like your own destiny, I guess, for lack of a better word. But
well, and
I
it
love
was,
to hear that. Yeah.
I don't know. It was really like just hearing you say it, like, and I'm like, if I can just be totally honest, I felt like I had to like try really hard to just live. And like, I feel like coming out and like kind of transitioning and coming into my own, like, it wasn't even like rediscovering anything that wasn't there. It was like falling into alignment. Like everything before, like everything that I like that we've previously discussed, it was just like opposition. It was just like always like having to like push and like do something that almost felt unnatural.
Right.
But then like, it was just kind of, it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Cause then it was just like, I can just be me. And that is enough.
Come on.
That's okay. Like, and it's okay. Like, I don't have to show up as anybody else, but Jillian. And I feel like that was like super empowering because then it was like, okay, now I feel like I've kind of come into my own. I have a house. I never thought I'd be able to own a house. Like we're building this life. And then that also gave me the space to be able to be like, well, what else can I do? Right. So I have this rugby team. Okay, why don't I try something else? I got injured playing sports. I had, first it was a shoulder with some broken fingers, season after season, it kind of wears on you. There's little things that happen when you play sports, like whether it's a contact sport or not. But I was like, especially rugby, no pads, no helmets.
That didn't happen to me in basketball.
Yeah, I was like,
you might go through a few different things than I went through.
I was like, cracked teeth, like you just kind of work it. But then I was coming off an injury and I was like, okay, so what could I do? And I was going to PT and I was like, well, it wouldn't hurt. My physical therapist, she's great. She's like, it wouldn't hurt if you got strong. Like if you could just weight lift and like do your exercises and like take some time off from beating yourself up and not giving enough time to recover, it could help you. I'm like, okay. So I took a rugby season off and I was like, well, I'm still competitive as hell. So what I'll do, I'll just try bodybuilding. So then I was like, I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone. I'll weight lift, get buff, and then like I can still do it to like win.
Right.
So then bodybuilding came in the picture. It was so cool. It was very challenging to like, it was a new way to kind of optimize and like challenge myself in a new way. And then, so I started training in 2022, March of 2022. I love March.
Right. March is your month.
Yeah. I was like, March Madness. So we went to Disneyland. I was like, I'm going to go Disneyland for spring break. And then we're going to like hit the pavement, like running.
That's cool.
And then I started weight training and like, I had a coach and, to help me with nutrition, just cause I was like ignorance on fire, man. So I was like, I'm going to just get big. And then I started eating my protein. And then I did my first show in August of 2022. Got really good feedback placed, which, I was like, bet. I'm not mad about that. And then I went
in August of 2022.
Yeah.
That was your first show.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I remember when you placed. I did not know that was your first show though.
Yeah, that was my first show.
That's remarkable.
Yeah,
that
it
is.
was crazy. It was a cool experience. And my first show was in a natty league, so like the vibe was a little different.
Mm.
It's called the OCB. And then I went to an MPC show, which is like the larger known federation. It's not drug tested, so it's got a little bit more different culture too. Like, you know, it's a bit bigger. Did that show, still placed
Come
a
on.
little bit lower, but like it was more competitive. So I was like, all right, back to the drawing board. They said you need to grow your shoulders and you need to build your butt. I was like, okay. So then I was like, I'll just do my best. And then we just kept kind of chipping away. And then November, I did my last show of my season and I ended up going pro. And so I went down to Tucson and I was like, I'm just going to surrender. Right. I was like, I'm just here to bring my package. What's the worst that could happen? You know, I go to makeup, I go to my tan, and it was a tested federation. So I went to do my lie detector test, get my tan, they're trying to make sure.
Wait, lie detector test?
Yeah, it's a way that they make sure, it's like their first wall of defense to make sure you're not using like banned substances.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, that kind of threw me off, but I was like, maybe everybody else is smarter than me and I'm just the only one confused.
Yeah, I mean, even me, I'm like, okay, you want to give me a lie detector test? That's fine. I'm like, it's not admissible in course. I'm like, what? But what can it hurt? I know I'm not doing anything I'm not supposed to be doing.
Is it just because the substances like don't necessarily show up in a blood test?
So
like, depending on which ones you take? Or
so I think what it is like they're basically just trying to be like, okay, we're gonna lie detector you. So if you don't pass the lie detector, then that's our first thing, like our first indicator, if you will, to say, oh, you could be doing something you're not supposed to be doing. And if you don't pass, I don't think you're allowed to compete. But passed it because I'm not doing drugs. Not any ones that are banned anyway. And then I go for my tan. It was just like so chill. Like, and then the lady that was tanning me, she's great. She's a Black-owned business. Love her to death. And she's also the show like promoter. So she was just like very much like, she's all about like making it a good experience for her athletes. So she's like, hey, honey, we're going to go get you tanned and all that stuff. I was like, bet, this is great. Thank you so much. And like, we're just vibing. And then the next day.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do got to say, I love the idea of a Black-owned tanning business.
I know.
That's a big flex.
I know.
That's G for real. And honestly, we need to be doing that. Why are we not capitalizing on that?
You want to be my color.
Right.
I'll share the melanin.
This way you're going to pay me.
Right. No.
Roundabout reparations.
No,
you feel me?
Right.
That's actually a genius.
No,
a Black-owned tan shop in Provo. You want to be like me?
I'll start all the ashiness. I'll start scratching and I'll be like, I'll add that to the package.
We're going to teach you how to moisturize. Okay.
I'll be like, you get some free ash with the tan.
So yeah, like it was dope. And like we all just showed up and like it was just like I just eased my way into the show. Like I watched Hunger Games the night before my show. I was eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches. I was getting my extensions ready because you gotta have show hair. So that was a thing. And so I was just like doing my hair up, getting it ready, got my bikini all out, like, and so yeah, and then just showed up show day, makeup to the nines, like already. I had one of my cousins, she flew down, my baby sister came and watched. And then like I went in, I was like, and of course, like you go in and it's like in bodybuilding, they say it's like you against you. And it is true. It's a solo sport. And some people might be on a team like competing and they show up to shows together, but at the end of the day, it's you.
Right.
So like I showed up, of course I'm going to size up everyone around me. Cause I was like, how do my glutes look against her glutes? And her calves are good, but like, you're just kind of like, and then you just kind of like laser in. I thought that I would come in. There was a girl that I saw. I was like, oh, she's going to take the show. I was like, she's going to win. I did not go in thinking I was going to win, whatever. I was like, I might place, but if I don't, oh, well, it's the last show. Then I get to have like Mexican food. Like,
right.
So then like, it was like really surreal. Like we just did it. We did the comparisons and like they have you in like height classes and you walk out in your smaller class and they compare and then you win in your class and then you have the open. And then they compare all the winners of the classes up to against each other and then they determine the winner. But
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then like I win my class and I was like, this is a win. This is the perfect end to my bodybuilding season. My first year, I was like, this is great.
Right.
And then I go back and I leave, I go into the front because you can sit and watch the other, competitors. And I'm like cheering everybody on. There was a girl from Texas. Oh man, I'll never forget her. Her name's she goes by Ada, like but it's Ada. She's Nigerian. So we like connected backstage. I saw her in her class. I was like, let's go, Niger, like power, like let's do this. And she's just like, yes. And she won. And I was like, this is great. So like everyone's just celebrating everybody. Yeah. And then comes like the open. So then like they have everyone from all the classes. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing it.
All the winners from each class?
Yeah, all the winners from each class. And I was like, this is great. Like, I can't believe I'm here right now. Like all these women, like these competitors, we did it. I feel like I'm making it. And then they're like, okay, everyone go off. We're going to call everybody out for the top and then whatever. And then like, anyway, long and the short of it is they bring everybody out, and they're given trophies and they call 5th place. I was like, oh, great. Okay. I'm 4th place.
At least I know I'm not right.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I got 4th place. Okay, cool. And then they're like, 4th place is this person. I was like, oh, okay. Top 3. Oh, this is great. I'm top 3. And then they're like 2nd place. I was like, okay, so I'm getting 2nd and that other girl's going to win. I was like, damn, this is good. And then they're like, and for the 1st place winner, we have Jillian Sowell. And I was like, what? Right. And then my sister's losing it and my cousin's losing it. And my friend that came and watched you, she's just like, yeah, where I'm just like in shock.
Right.
But yeah, it was crazy. And like, I feel proud because I mean, bodybuilding, we're athletes, right? But it is still it's a very white dominated sport. Right. And I think also because like barriers to entry, like it can be expensive to compete, especially if you go all out every single show, like it's a lot. And then like, if you're going to like national shows and like all this stuff. So I just felt lucky to be there. And also like, I'd been working, selling houses and like, so I could fund this. It was like, you work, for months and months to do this. And so that was really cool. And then also like the promoter, I was just so happy that I like, it just felt like Black power, like a Black promoted show and like my tanning, my like everything, my makeup, it was all like Black excellence. And I was like, this is dope. Like, so, and then it was, I end up packing up, I get my feedback from the judges. I drive home from Tucson. Cause it's like, from driving from like Provo to like Ogden. So I'm driving home, go to my family. They surprised me with a Blackstone grill. I was like, I need it.
Wow.
So yeah, but anyway,
amazing.
That was bodybuilding, but it was cool. It was cool. Really,
And that was a pro show or that was an amateur show?
So I earned my pro status. So if you win an amateur show, you then get your pro status.
Okay, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think it's cool to hear your story because you see your life. It's kind of what Nate was saying too, is like you see your life become, it feels, at least how you describe it to us, effortless. You know what I mean? Like, I think what's beautiful is when you leave, okay, to make it make sense. There's this book that I love, and it's the 7 Spiritual Laws, I think it's called. I
just listened to that today.
It's phenomenal. Everybody who has ears or eyes or anything, just have the book. The point is, in the book, it says there's two paths in life, and it's one is to make your decisions by fear, and the other one is to make your decisions by intuition. And I think what happens is a lot of religions, especially Mormonism, because that's what that's my experience, right? It's all our experience, what we know. But religions push your actions by fear. If you don't do this, then you won't live in the celestial kingdom. If you don't go on a mission, then you won't find a good spouse. X, Y, Z, and forever. But I think when you step out of that mindset, you start to live by intuition, and it becomes effortless because it's just what feels right. But I also think you see so much success. You started a rugby team. First off, what? You know what I mean? Like, you started a rugby team. You all these things. You're a pro bodybuilder and a real estate agent. Like, all these things, I think, are very beautifully effortless. And I think a lot of it has to do with like being, able to move by your path. Anyways, I just think that's beautiful to recognize in your story, but also something I value a lot too.
Well, and fear is like a really powerful motivator,
Insane.
right? And like right under fear, like shame, like, And when you let that go and you can be powered by something else, I feel like that's where it's like exponential growth.
Absolutely.
Like, and it compounds. Like, that's all I can explain. I mean, because literally it's like, okay, how could I go 26 years living a certain way? And then in this short span of time, it seems like it happened overnight, but it was like all of that was a culmination to what's here now.
Yep.
And it's weird to kind of like look back in hindsight.
For sure.
But like, yeah, it becomes a really beautiful life when you don't feel like scared, you know?
Heard you.
So.
Love that.
Yeah.
Powerful. Powerful story.
Right.
Powerful.
I'm blown away right
powerful
now.
bodybuilder.
I'm a sucker for an
powerful
underdog,
rugby.
man.
Love that. Well, I mean, before we do our recommendations, is there anything else that you want to share? Anything you felt like you didn't get to talk about? Anything you wanted to bring up? I try to cover everything that you put in your.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I remember when, like, again, when I was like secretly like in the midst of like trying to deconstruct my faith, right? Like, and I remember like they had the I'm a Mormon campaign, but then on the flip side of that, I remember coming across YouTube and it was like, and I'm an ex-Mormon. And I watched some of those videos and here I am like in my fear-based like self, like closeted, like trying to function and, you know, be everything that I'm not. Like, and I was like, oh, these people are saying that they're happy.
Right.
Like that they are finding happiness outside of like this construct that they used to prescribe to, and now they're not. And that's okay. And I also want to say, if you choose to be in a faith, that is a personal choice.
For sure.
Absolutely.
As long as you're not harming yourself, anybody else, or you're standing up for people who are being harmed, I respect your right to do that.
For sure.
You know, and I expect that same thing in return. But like just I would just say keep trying to optimize and like discover and like dig deeper, because like I had a lot of stuff that I had internalized. Like I dealt a lot with anti-Blackness. Like my proximity, I was working hard to close that gap with my proximity to whiteness because that was the ideal. Same thing with my sexuality. I was working hard like to really show up and not be who I was in order to be like, you know, but yeah, I guess it's just like, you can find happiness. You can like let go of shame and guilt and all that stuff. And I feel like there's a lot of really amazing things on the other side of that.
Absolutely.
And it's like, it's worth it. And I would say like it was, deconstruction is one of the hardest things I've ever done, ever.
Heard you.
I mean, divorce, like it was hard, but I would do it a million times over.
Right.
If I knew that I could get to the point where I'm at now and like being able to just like connect with people in a different way. And that's the other thing too. I didn't want friendships and relationships of convenience. I wanted like friendships and relationships of like substance. Like I didn't want it to be like, well, I'm your visiting teacher. So, or we go to church together. So like, I wanted to be able to look at another human and be like, you are dope.
Right.
You look like someone I want to talk to. Like, let's find some common ground and like, let's like converge in this moment. And maybe we see each other again and maybe we don't. But like, it's really cool to have an exchange like that where there's no motives other than just like, I'm just being a human for human's sake. Yeah. And I'm just being kind for the sake of being kind.
Right.
So I don't know. I guess that's kind of all.
Absolutely.
That's all I got. But yeah.
Received.
Message received. Absolutely. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, last thing we got to do is we always got to have our recommendations at the end. Sebastian, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Yes, I have a great recommendation, actually.
Hit it.
I did on the way here. And this is going to be very off the wall. So normally, if you go to the gas station and get a Slurpee, in my experience in life, you get like one or two, right? Nothing crazy, one or two, just drop them in there. Today, I put like 5. And let me tell you, that was like the best decision I think I've made, because, you know, from my experience, when you drink a Slurpee, it's like, oh, I feel like I've been drinking this flavor for too long. It's good. It's a little too sweet, though. I'm over the flavor. When you have like 5 flavors in there, let me tell you, you're not going to be rid of any flavor. You're happy, continue. You're like, ooh, you know what I mean? Like, ooh, switch up. So that's my recommendation. Go to this is, like I said, off the wall. Go to Maverick. That's where I went.
Oh, Maverick.
Get about 5 different Slurpee flavors, and I promise you, it will hit the palate differently. That's me. Yep.
Sounds good.
Boom.
To me.
Delulu is the Salulu.
That's
My
And
guy.
it will be. And it will be.
Have you tried the Frazil that they have at Maverick?
No, but I was looked at it yesterday, and it just about caught my eye.
It's unbelievable.
And
I don't know how
will
they
have it
make
soon.
that particular substance, but it's like little tiny things. It's like crushed ice, but I don't even.
Okay.
know
And
how
now
to
I'm mad
describe
that
it,
I didn't do it when they had that big deal here.
It's the free one.
Yeah, like
every
free
Friday.
Frazil every Friday or something. I did not do it because I didn't know what a Frazil was.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't get one that like whole month. I think we did it one time, but it's delicious.
Okay.
For
Love
sure.
it.
So gotta try the Frazil. Have you tried Frazil?
No.
No. Yeah,
We have like a very chubby friend relationship.
yeah, we do.
We eat a lot when we're together.
We
It's
do.
it's a special bond we have.
We be trying different kinds of stuff. We went to it was like crumble cookies, but for cinnamon rolls.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh.
So they had like custom cinnamon rolls.
Oh.
Those were
Right.
incredible. What else did we try? We tried like a random Somali restaurant.
We had one day I took a video. It's probably about 7,000 calories. It had to be.
Yeah, it
I
was
ain't even
insane.
mad about that.
We
It's
had a lot of
bulking
chocolate.
season.
It was a good day.
We're bulking partners.
That's what it is. It's all about fitness. It's the chocolate is to bulk. you know?
Yes.
We should make a Nate and Sebastian eats TikTok or something.
Hey,
we have
I'm
to.
here for that.
Maybe we'll do that. But
What is it?
okay.
Okay. Yes.
My recommendation for this week, man. Yeah. So I just listened to a book by an author named S.A. Cosby. It's a Black author. I don't know if that's like their real name or a pseudonym, but man, that book was so good. It's
What's it
called
called?
All the Sinners Bleed.
And
It's a fictional book about a Black sheriff in a southern Virginia county, who has to catch a serial killer.
Okay.
And man, I've never read, I was trying to remember the last time I read a book by a Black author. But the way they were able to weave that story together, it just combines like all the elements of a perfect book. And so reading that, you really identify with the main character, who is a sheriff, and he has to deal with like the perception of being a sheriff in a predominantly white county in the South, where he's dealing with a lot of racist people who like want to, I won't get too much into it, but it's like dealing with the racial dynamics of that, and then also how he's perceived by the Black community. And they talk about that also while he's trying to like find this serial killer. Oh man, it's such a good book. So it's called All the Sinners Bleed. You can find it on Libby. You can check it out at the library, whatever.
We're big supporters of Libby here.
That is my recommendation, is to read that book, All the Sinners Bleed. Thank you. Madam Jillian, what you got?
Oh man. Okay. I had a few, and now they're just like gone.
That's how it happens.
It be like that sometimes.
Just whatever comes to your intuition, just go.
It could be a Slurpee.
I mean, I'll go to like bodybuilding because that's what I know.
Love it.
One of the number one things that people always like talk about is like, well, what do I do for like my macros? And I recently heard about this 800-gram challenge, where basically what it is just as a starting point, like before you try and kick off any kind of like fitness journey, or like say you want to be a bodybuilder or you want to like do CrossFit, whatever, start with like changing the most minimal things you can change instead of like doing big changes. So you're successful. You're setting yourself up for success. Pivot point to that would be Atomic Habits. If you haven't read it, read it.
Cool.
It's not a Black author, but there's a lot of really great nuggets in there so that you can be striving towards your own Black excellence.
Period.
But the 800-gram challenge is something I recently actually just heard about today, where you just commit to eating 800 grams of fresh produce every day.
That's dope.
And then like you don't change anything else. Like drink your water and stuff like that.
That is, yeah.
But like the premise is that you eat the 800 grams of fruit and veg whatever. It's not, don't overthink it, just do it. And then once you do that, you can then say, okay, now I'm going to add protein. I'm going to start prioritizing protein. So like, it's just like little habit changes.
Cool.
I'm right there myself right now. Like I had a huge back surgery in May. So like I came from that high and like got real humbled real quick. And I had to like totally scrap my pro season. And I got like really depressed.
Mm.
But now I'm just trying to like get back on that like groove. So I'm going to be doing the 800 gram challenge.
That's cool.
So I would enjoy I would encourage you to try it.
That's cool. I actually might low-key do it. I was doing like fitness stuff the whole first part of the year. And then in August, I went on too many vacations. I was eating, to say the least. It's been a great time. I'm not mad at it. But I might do that because I'm about to get back into it. Yeah. Which is great and sad.
I mean, even if you're like not working out, it's just a good like rule of thumb to like, 800 grams. And it's not a lot. Like, you know, it's like a salad.
Cool.
But yeah.
I like that. That's dope.
Yeah. Cool.
That grocery bill can go up.
No, for real. Also, for the grams part, is there like a good scale that you would recommend? Like a food scale or like a good way to measure food? Because like a lot of people, we're Americans, we don't know the metric system. I know about grams for a different reason. But
Same.
Me too.
And also all I gotta say is just forget your freedom units and just go with grams. It's gonna be the most accurate, especially if you're gonna weigh your food, weigh it. If you don't want to weigh it, then you could use measuring cups. You know, that's always good. But weighing your food's always going to be the most accurate. And I always encourage like little life hack is like pre-weigh everything so you don't have to like weigh it every time. So like on Sundays, I cook 7 pounds of like chicken thighs or chicken breasts, and then I weigh out my little snacks. So it's like grab and go.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But like that, because I got ADHD. I'm trying to medicate that stuff and get it under wraps. And it's like, I ain't got the bandwidth for some stuff sometimes.
Heard that.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Make it easy. Make it easy to choose what you want to do.
I like that. I'm pretty sure I have some undiagnosed ADHD myself.
It'd be like that.
Well, my therapist did tell me I had ADHD. We like went through the DSM and everything, but like official diagnosis, I don't have that. But that's good to know.
I would. I also sorry. I'm just. I'm coming through with all kinds of recommendations.
We're having a good time.
Right.
I would just say too. Please, if you are speculating that you think you have ADHD, I was assessed as a child, and my mom and dad had like decided not to medicate because they felt like the meds were too new at the time. So I had to find lots of different ways to manage it, and it wasn't always the most successful.
Right.
But if you think that you have ADHD or you're somewhere in that little spectrum of, ADD, whatever, go get tested, especially if you're Black. Like, because I feel like, that's a whole other podcast, probably, like discrepancies in how we get diagnosed. Sometimes we really have to advocate for ourselves, whether it's ADHD and mental health or like birth.
Right.
Like,
our last episode.
Go get tested. Go get tested and get an assessment by a reputable place.
Right.
If at all, if you can, like I found a really great Black therapist and she's a psychologist that, she can assess me. Because I feel like there's nuance there, but that'll be my end recommendation is take care of your mental health, y'all, because you will suffer if you don't. And you only got one body and you only got one brain. So
period. Okay, can I just say one more recommendation? I'm so sorry. This is on the Chubby Boy Adventures. Dairy Queen
boy and
has
Chubby Boy.
85-cent small blizzards for the next few days. Oh, okay. So download the app and get you an 85-cent blizzard. Let me tell you, in the right circumstance, that blizzard will change your life.
I believe it.
What, in the Utah? 85 cent?
85. It's because it's like some special blizzard. It's like 85th anniversary or something.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dang.
85.
It's something like super, like particular to Dairy Queen. But 85 cents for a small is kind of a steal. No, and I think it's till September 24th.
That takes me back to the days of Big Mac Mondays at LDS Business College, and we're all starving. 99-cent Big Macs.
Oh, wow.
I would throw down 3 of those. I kid you not.
Yeah, that's
not mad at it.
No,
but yeah, what in the Utah? Get it.
Get it.
Since we're on the Chubby Boy thing,
come on.
I saw an article today. Today is National Cheeseburger Day. No, it's a Monday right now. So I don't know if this will come out. Oh, this comes out next week. This might not even be valid by then.
Well,
but maybe it'll still be. I know until what is today? The 18th? Until the 22nd, Wendy's is selling 1-cent burgers.
Yes, they are.
So get you a 1-cent burger.
I'm about 100 of them
if it's still going on.
Spend $1, big baller.
Thank goodness for bulking season.
Smiles all around.
And if you're cutting, then get the bunless burger. Lettuce wrap.
Get that lettuce wrap. You still need protein and fats.
Right.
Get it.
Cool.
Period.
All right. Well, Jillian Sowell, thank you so much
Yes.
for coming on the podcast. We had a great time
Thanks for
interviewing you.
having
So
me.
grateful that you flew all the way from the far away and exotic land of Arizona
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly.
to come and grace
Yes,
us with,
absolutely.
with your story. We learned a lot today, so we appreciate that.
I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks
It was-
for like doing all you guys do.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This was a
Absolutely.
beautiful time, beautiful experience.
You guys
For
are
sure.
great.
And with that, we'll catch y'all next week.
Bye.
Until next time.